Hello, football faithful. Welcome back to another episode of the Double Doink Podcast. My name is Brenden D. Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. It would be greatly appreciated. If you can also rate the podcast and review the podcast wherever you do listen to your podcast, it would also be greatly appreciated. We are talking Philadelphia Eagles today. Eagles lose 31-15 to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're officially eliminated, but I'm happy to be joined by Philly Mike of the Philly Talk Podcast is with me. Mike, how we doing?
Hanging in there. Like I said, successful season, but anytime you lose in the playoffs, regardless the circumstance, is tough.
Yeah, we were talking before. I just wanted to ask you how you were doing if you're taking the loss. Okay, Sunday definitely sucked. And Monday morning you kind of had the loss hangover, but long off season ahead, and we're going to be talking about some of that. But before we do, I do want to talk about the Buccaneers game as it's still kind of fresh on our mind. Again, Eagles lose 31-15. You just actually dropped a video on your YouTube channel and highly recommend checking that out. Mike's gonna be plugging that in at the end, but you just dropped a video about I guess you checked out the All 22. I rewatched the condensed version on Game Pass. I've not checked out and the All 22 yet. Just curious of what maybe your biggest takeaway was from rewatching the game.
I just think the whole offense was off. But it definitely stems down to the quarterback. A lot of meat left on the bone. We've seen him have a couple of these games this season. I don't think that defines him, as Jalen Hurts says itself, but it's definitely some concerns because I feel like there's a blueprint out. It's similar to what the Giants did. You know, a lot of man, just sending blitzes and trying to make him beat you with his, progressions because there was some things open, and he just didn't find it or he, panicked. This was one of the games where I think he, lost a little bit that he gained, throughout the season and this run, not just with the NFC East, but against the Chargers and all these guys that we were beating we lost to the Chargers, but it was close, beat the Broncos. He was staying in the pocket, not hitting the panic button, throwing to the left. And I think he, referred back to all the things that he needs to continue to grow with.
Yeah, I think it was on the Jalen Hurts side. It was definitely an emphasis of his weaknesses. His eyes were drifting. His eyes were going down. That's kind of my biggest takeaway from him. He just wasn't keeping his eyes up. He was panicking. You could tell the Bucs were actually sending a lot of blitzes from the second level as well, and I think that affected him. The Bucs just straight up ran a ton of man-to-man. They did not care. They went straight up to Reagor. They went straight up to Watkins. Watkins and Reagor had tough times getting off the line of scrimmage. I think Reagor was emphasized more than Watkins, but the receiver, the weaknesses on the receiver end as well stood out. And yeah, straight up, it was the offense. Like the defense, you can rip Jonathan Gannon all you want. He's an easy punch and target in Philadelphia, but the offense didn't produce. There was 17-0 pretty quickly, but the offense had the chances to make this a game. And I also think just after the interception before halftime, that was probably the end of the ball game.
Yeah, I agree. And if the offense puts up one touchdown in that first three possessions, and then the defense does what it does on the tail end, right? Maybe Brady and the Bucs offense look different because they maybe went to somewhat of a coast mode, running the ball a little bit more. But the defense gave you 3 or 4 straight punts, or at least 4 to 5 punts. Yeah. You got to take advantage of it, knowing that it's Tom Brady on the other end. So I definitely didn't like how Gannon approached it because it looks like every other quarterback that I always say C+ or better, he falls back and he will not do anything different. I've seen a lot of wrinkles over the stretch in playing more man. We were paying like 18% beginning of the season, got up to like 30. I thought we would see that because Tom Brady struggles with the different wrinkles. Zone man. Not saying we're going to go heavy zone, but more than what we did, and we failed to do it. But it definitely falls on the offense.
They had 4 3-and-outs in their first 7 drives. If you told me that the Eagles defense was going to get Brady off the field 4 times in their first 7 drives, in let's say a couple days before the game, I would have signed all over that. And it didn't pan out on the offensive side of the ball. Did this game maybe tinker with your thoughts about Jalen Hurts a little bit going into the offseason?
Because football is going to be a long ways away. It definitely left a sour taste. I never flatly said I was sold on him, but I definitely in Hurts' corner. I believed for the majority of this season, I seen baby steps, and I believe that we should give him the opportunity to start next year. Maybe hedge something with moving a first-round pick to the 2023, see if we could do that, something along them lines. But definitely give him the shot. Now, this is concerning because a blueprint is out, and, to have to revert back that much into things that we wanted to see you do good at, and you started getting better, and to go back pretty much on a game that you didn't think was coming you that way is definitely a red flag. And we're not going to see football until
Yeah.
next August. So he got to prove some things early in next season, even if he makes it that far, because we are talking about Howie Roseman and an aggressive front office.
I think his three biggest weaknesses are arm strength, which is not going to get changed. You're not going to be able to get a stronger arm. It's just realistically, when you're 23 years old, your arm probably is what your arm is. But you can win in the NFL with having a below average arm. Teams have proven, or players have proven that throughout the course of NFL history. So I don't think that is the end all be all. I do think the anticipation thing is a massive issue. If you have a bad arm strength or if you have a weak arm, you got to be able to anticipate the throws a lot quicker. And I think the third thing is keeping his eyes up downfield. And the latter two can be fixed. So I do think Eagles fans need to kind of not say after 23-year-old quarterback is what he is. That's not true. The quarterback, he's still a young kid. And I said this on Monday, a Monday show. He's 23 years old, and I feel like a lot of us forget how young he is because he's been in the limelight for a long time. Like, he was at Alabama at 18 years old, right? He's been on national television for 5-6 years. So as fans and just football fans in general, I feel like we all forget how young Jalen Hurts is, and he can still develop. But I do think he's got a ton of work to do. And I don't know if Shane Steichen and Brian Johnson, the quarterback coach, are the guys to fix him. I guess we're going to find out. But there's also the chance here, like you brought up, they have 3 first-round draft picks that they can move on to a quarterback. What do you think? Are you open to trading or signing a veteran quarterback?
As we sit right now, I don't think so. The names that come up, the Carr, Baker Mayfield, who else? Jimmy G's a free agent. You got the Russell and Aaron Rodgers trade talks. I just doubt that's even a reality at this point. We hear Deshaun Watts' name, and I'm all on the lines that you got to prove me he's allowed back in the NFL and everything is cool before I can even fathom that.
A lot more to be solved with Watson's case.
Exactly. But to your arm strength point, I don't think he is as weak as a thrower as people make it out to be. I think if you rated right now all 32 quarterbacks, I think he'd be at least in an upper 15. I think his problem
about average.
I think his problem is his lower body and his mechanics and him, putting his eyes down for a second. And not some of the times, just because, and shout out to the quarterback gurus. I work with a couple of them on YouTube and whatnot, but just because the head is facing that way, don't mean he's necessarily looking that way. His eyes can still drop. You can't see. It only really hurts nose. And so my take on it is he puts his body in weird positions that he doesn't have to be. So then when the throw is there, he has to work with his feet, get his arm right, and he does have a longer gated throw in motion. And so that is what it is. I believe the timing with his footwork and his lower body, because I've seen him sling the ball down the field, and I just don't think it's as weak as, like, if you stack Gardner Minshew's arm with Jalen Hurts, I think Jalen Hurts has more arm talent. I think Minshew reads the field and gets the ball out quicker. He plays within the offense and a scheduled offense, where Hurts is more of the off-schedule offense, but we've seen him throw darts. I think it's just the lower body and him not forcing the issue to get his body twisted up or try to escape the pocket before it's necessary.
Yeah, no, I feel like if you get the anticipation thing right, if you can anticipate the throws better, if you can read the field better, the arm strength will look better. Like, I think it's all kind of attached. He just doesn't have the rocket cannon that we watch on primetime that Mahomes or Herbert has, and you don't need that to win in the NFL. Like, I do agree with you. I do think it's over-exaggerated. I think he's probably about average or below average NFL arm, but that's okay. And if you anticipate the throw better, if you, like you said, if you get your lower body into the throw, and you're right, he reaches back a little, like his throwing mechanics do look kind of off. And I do think it was also emphasized on that pick before halftime. Like, it took him almost a second to kind of turn, wind up, and get that ball to Smith. Like, I feel like that little stuff, if he can correct it, and he's a hard worker, man. This guy works his ass off. He's a good leader. He's the type of guy that I feel like you could trust to fix that stuff, right? To work harder. Like, I don't think that was the same case for the guy that was played before us and Carson Wentz. I was a Wentz guy, but I feel like Jalen Hurts is a better and harder worker than Carson Wentz is, and will do that to fix it. But it's tough. It's an NFL quarterback. It's the hardest position in football. It's arguably the hardest job in the world. So I do think that if you give him the opportunity, and you should give him opportunity, that would be the best case scenario for this organization. And I do agree. I don't think the free agency aspect's the way to go. I do think Deshaun Watson would be the one name that Howie Roseman would like or would look after if his court cases and stuff do get fixed. But Russell Wilson, like, he's 33 years old. I don't think you're trading 3 first-round quarterbacks or 3 first-round picks, for him. So I do think, just in general, that it's probably not going to happen. But who knows? Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman do love their quarterbacks, and they love the passing offense. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on. Okay, overall opinion of the season. Like, I'm assuming that you thought this was successful, like I did.
Yeah, I thought it was a successful season. We were talked about to win 3 to 5 games. 6 is what Vegas had us. And if you looked at a lot of the bettors, they were taking the under on it. So I definitely believe us getting 9 wins. And a lot of people say this: you only got 9 wins because your schedule was easy. Well, when you picked how many teams we were going to beat, you saw the same schedule. People act like people saw the Eagles schedule, picked it to only be 3 to 4 to 5 wins. Then we switched it, and that's how we got these wins. No, you saw Giants on the schedule twice, Washington on the schedule twice, Saints, Broncos, Panthers, Falcons, right? These are teams we beat, and although they didn't shape out how you thought, that just goes to show you can't predict who's going to be good and bad necessarily the way you want to. You know the juggernauts, but there's always teams that have quicker turnarounds, and I believe the Eagles are ahead of schedule in a transition year. I said rebuild in front of Dave Spadero, and he was like, that's a dirty word to say in the NFL. Don't say that. So I've been sticking with transition year.
No, exactly. Like, I think any fan couldn't have predicted this. I didn't predict them to go playoffs. I predicted 7-10. Like, that was my record prediction before the year. I thought that was even being, because Vegas predicted 6.5 wins. All sports books, every sports book across the world predicted 6.5 wins. Vegas is pretty sharp with the totals. I do agree. That's one thing that they get multiple things right, but they are very sharp on season totals. To go 2.5 wins above that, like, that's successful. And like you said, it was supposed to be a rebuild year. If you looked at this roster, like, it's very top heavy, and they didn't have a lot of depth. Like, you have Darius Slay, had stars like Slay, Kelsey, Lane Johnson, and Devonta Smith, we thought was going to get hot, and he was as advertised. So some of the depth, like, even stepped up, but that was surprising. Like, Avonte Maddox had a really good year. Josh Sweat played really well down the stretch. Like, little things like that matters. Dallas Goedert looked like a top 5 tight end in the NFL. He looks like he's on Zach Ertz's trajectory here. That's another thing too. Like, he can be another, like, kind of that impactful of an offensive weapon. And the other thing too that I keep coming back to is, on
the tough catches, I wanted to say, because he's been dropping some gimmies. That's
he needs to hit that jug machine. I feel like he should hit the jug machine all offseason. He's got to work. He's had some big time drops, like the one, like, we just forgot. Remember, he kicked up that ball with his heel. Like, he dropped that one, and it was picked off, or it was picked off, right? That one play where he dropped it. Yeah. So, like, he's got some drop issues, but in general, like, he looks like a really, really good player, and he could be a top 5 tight end. Yeah, exactly. So. And I come back to this. I remember it was 2013 draft. Eagles took Lane Johnson, Zach Ertz, first and second round picks. Those 2 guys were building blocks. Like, those were just rocks for this organization. But if you take a look at the 2018 draft right now, Avonte Maddox, Dallas Goedert, Josh Sweat, and Jordan Mailata, you have 4 building blocks right there that are now signed to long-term extensions. You have 4 guys. They're not all superstars, but they have potential. Mailata, Goedert, and I'll even put Sweat there. I do think Sweat has a ton of upside. Like, you kind of have the foundation set. Now you just need to go add to it.
Yeah, and I even think Avonte Maddox gets overlooked because when you're grading him as a slot corner, he's done well in his career. He just didn't have the opportunity to play at all. I mean, we treated him kind of unfair, where rookie season, slot looks good. Next thing you know, he's playing safety. Next thing you know, he's playing outside. Next thing you know, he's moving this way and that way. I think once he got back to doing what he was doing, I mean, kind of tailed off at the end of the season, but for the large portion of the season, he was a top-ish corner when you talk about the slot and what they do. So I definitely like that. I think the 2018 draft was very solid, and we just need to get more of them.
So a couple more questions before we get out of here. Jonathan Gannon's getting some head coaching love right now. He's had 3 interviews scheduled, or 3 interviews have been scheduled. He's already interviewed with the Minnesota Vikings, I believe. What's your opinion on him? It's kind of been all over the place. Like, would you be upset if he got hired somewhere? If he did, who would you look to bring in? But it's overall, like, how do you think what do you think the future of Jonathan Gannon in Philly looks like?
I mean, it's tough. I definitely don't like the style he plays, but I do look at numbers. I don't let them judge my sole belief in whether a guy is good or not. I also use somewhat of the eye test and just living in the moment. And Jonathan Gannon has let me down in every time and every aspect I wanted him to step up in. The Philly media is it gets in your face when it comes to press conferences. And he was asked multiple times about quarterbacks, whether they're great or just average, completing 70% plus, blah, blah, blah. He doesn't have an answer for that. You know, whether you think the Eagles defense is not as stout as it should be, maybe that's the look that the NFL saying, wow, he did this with that defense. But you also got to look at the NFL being a stat driven league. And when you look at points per game being like 12th in the NFL. Last time I checked, you know, he was a top 5 to 7 in stopping passing yards and blah, 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 because we don't give it the big play. He looks good. And I think that the NFL is one of these leagues where you want to be right? They were right with Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan. So the way he was looked at prior to even coming to the Eagles, I think is playing a role, as well as the satisfaction level he's produced to probably other organization when it comes to totality in defense and getting the Eagles from a 4-win team where we were bad on defense to being somewhat good. You look at Slay going back to the Pro Bowl with him. So I ain't mad because of the style I believe Philly needs to have is not what he presents. So I wouldn't be mad if he walked, as long as we can pull like a Vic Fangio or, even a Mike Zimmer, who kind of has the same scheme, even though JG says he doesn't have a scheme. He definitely does.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that Zimmer will offer more man. And although I don't want to play man throughout the whole game, I just think you got to throw in wrinkles. And us being 31st in sacks after being third is mind-boggling. I know it's not a wide 9 like Jim Schwartz had, but you don't go from third to 31st with losing one player in Brandon Graham.
Agreed.
It's wild.
I agree. And I do, I love your first point because like I grew up watching Jim Johnson style defenses and like it's completely different. And the other thing is too, I feel like defensive players, like the instincts, and like when you're watching defense, it's kind of like you want full head of steam. You want to see them attack the ball. Like when you're watching defense, you want aggression, you want to go forward. And I just feel like it's kind of, he plays the opposite to what defensive instincts are. But I could say the NFL is kind of transitioning that way. A lot of 2-eye shell, a lot of Tampa 2. He liked playing Tampa 2. He disguised it well, John. Again, I will say that this year. So I think it's fine. And I'm also, I'd be curious to see if he has like input on who they like sign or draft to his defense. Like if he has any input in the draft picks or bringing his guys. Like the defense wasn't built for Jonathan Gannon's style of defense, right? It was built for the previous regime and Jim Schwartz. So I'd be curious to see that. Any last question? Any free agents? Because free agency's first. Draft, we always remember the draft is second. Free agency hits pretty quickly when the Super Bowl is done. Any free agents that have caught your eye or that you have on your mind?
I haven't really dove into it. The wide receiver too is still something I want, and I think we should go into the free agency market for that with the big names in Gallup and Godwin and Williams. Even a guy like Allen Robinson. I don't know if he still has another year, but
he'll be a free agent.
He'll be a free agent as well. Yep. These are guys that you can really plug and play. They're all, not all the bigger, but Gallup, Godwin, and Williams, and even Allen Robinson, they're all bigger. They can line up at the X position, let Devontae be the route runner. If you look at who Jalen Hurts was throwing to in Oklahoma, it was CeeDee Lamb, a go up and get it guy, rather than a guy who's going to fall under the ball where he needs to get better at. So I definitely will look there. You can always upgrade on the defensive side, but I do think that if everything goes according to how it's feeling right now, if we don't put this last game too much stock in, the Eagles should go get defensive players with their first couple picks. But to stay free agency, I'm looking at a wide receiver. I think Quez Watkins is a legit 3. Yes. I think he's I like him, and I was on him. It was crazy because I was on him before the draft. I have a video prior to anybody talking about him. I saying we can probably get him in the 5th or 6th round. And there we go and get him. Golden Eagle turn to Philly Eagle. But if you have him as your 3rd and you got a second guy, it's legit. 600 yards, sneaky. he did good, but him being your second kind of limits you outside Goddard and Smith. And so give Hurts some more weapons.
Wide receiver 2 is a huge need, and pass rusher is also a massive need. I would bring in a veteran pass rusher. I feel like veteran pass rushers are one of those things like you can find value in cheaply too. Like look at Chris Long, like that signing was unbelievable for the Eagles. Justin Houston for the Colts. Yeah, Kerrigan was kind of like that sort of style, like that kind of signing, like the cheap 1 year, $5-6-4 million deals that you can find value on. So I would definitely bring in 1 and 2 of those guys. Wide receiver 2, I would definitely address in free agency or via trade. I would not go into the draft not addressing that. They did that with the Rager year. Remember, like everyone knew the Eagles were taking a wide receiver in the first round of the year because they did not address it before. So I do think that you address it via trade or free agency and pass rusher. I think those are the 2 that Eagles fans should be watching out for. Philly Mike of the Philly Talk Podcast. Thanks for coming on, man. Before you go, why don't you plug in anything you want the viewers or listeners to take a look at?
Yeah, man. Follow me on Twitter at Philly_Mike25 and check me out on YouTube. Listen, I'm not computer savvy, so that's why I don't put none of my stuff on Spotify and all these podcast places. You can find me on YouTube. Search Philly Mike or the Philly Talk Podcast. I'll pop up. You know, we drop episodes pretty much every day, live streams. We always find something to talk about when it comes to Philadelphia sports, but most importantly, the Eagles.
Amy Trask of CBS Sports will be on tomorrow's episode of Double Dunk Podcast. Looking forward to that. Eagles Talk will be back on Thursday. Talk to you later.